Young actress Sarah once again took to the stage, hoping this evening would be her breakthrough. She had a few small roles under her belt, but success still eluded her. Each new role seemed less significant, and her dreams of true recognition felt farther away. Sarah knew she needed more than just a chance. She had to prove to everyone, including herself, that her talent was worth something greater. After rehearsal, she decided to head to a cafe to distract herself and stop thinking about the casting she hadn't been invited to. She ordered a cup of black coffee and sat by the window, watching people rush by, caught up in their busy lives. At times like this, Sarah always felt like she was a part of something bigger than just an actress. She dreamed of the day when her name would be in the headlines and on theater posters. But to get there, she needed more than just talent. She needed a chance that could change everything. Suddenly, the cafe door swung open, and a man walked in, drawing attention even in such a lively place. His figure immediately stood out, not just because of his tailored suit, but also his confident posture. He was older than most people in the cafe, but his gaze and demeanor spoke volumes. Sarah couldn't help but notice his presence. He moved with such assurance, as if the whole world was at his command. As he approached the bar, their eyes met. The man smiled, and Sarah felt her heart race. He didn't look like someone who just came to have a coffee. He seemed like someone who could change her life. Walking up to her table, he didn't rush into conversation, but simply said, "You look like you're searching for your path, but haven't quite found it yet." His voice was deep, carrying a tone of wisdom, but also a hint of regret. Sarah froze, unsure how to respond. This stranger seemed to read her soul. After a moment, she found the strength to answer, "I'm just trying to find my way. It's not always easy, but I don't give up." He sat down across from her without asking, continuing, "Sometimes we search for answers where they don't exist. But if you look closely, everything you need is already right in front of you." His eyes sparkled, and Sarah felt an unfamiliar excitement stir inside her. Her gaze was fixed on his face. This man wasn't just a random passerby. "I'd like to offer you something more than just a conversation," he said after a pause. "Are you interested in a role that could change your life?" Sarah felt her heart flutter. Few knew of her ambitions, but she had always dreamed of a role that could elevate her career to the next level. She was ready to do anything for such an opportunity, and she couldn't believe that the person sitting across from her was offering something like that. Her life could change right now, but she couldn't quite understand what lay behind his words. "What role?" she asked, trying to hide her excitement. "A role in a film I'm making. The lead role," he replied, and her heart skipped a beat. "I know you're not just an actress. You're capable of so much more. I've seen your work, and I need you to play this part." Sarah could hardly believe what she was hearing. This was the chance she had been waiting for. Her eyes lit up, and she felt a surge of energy. It all felt like a dream that couldn't possibly be real. "Don't you recognize me?" he said, suddenly smiling. "I'm Denzel Washington." Sarah jumped to her feet, her gaze locked on his face, and she felt her world turn upside down. Denzel Washington, the legendary actor adored by millions, and here he was, sitting right in front of her, ready to offer her a role. But how could this be possible? Why her? "I know you don't believe me," he continued, noticing her stunned expression. "But I'm giving you a chance to understand that the time has come. You'll play the lead role. I'm offering you this opportunity." But Sarah still couldn't come to terms with it. Could this all be fate? She had always dreamed of this moment, but now that it was happening, she wasn't sure if she was ready. Inside, she was overwhelmed with emotions, her thoughts tangled. This was an incredible opportunity, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this offer than just a film role. Denzel watched her, and Sarah felt his gaze go deeper than she had ever expected. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice full of certainty. Sarah gathered herself, and trying to hide the tremor in her voice, she answered, "Yes, I'm ready." But deep inside, she felt a sense that this choice might change her life forever, and that perhaps she had just taken the first step on a path that would lead to something far greater than just a film role. Several days had passed since Sarah met Denzel Washington in the cafe. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, but all she could think about was the role he had offered. She couldn't believe that she had actually been given the chance to be a part of a project that could become her big break. She thought about his words, about how confidently he had spoken of her talent. But it all seemed too good to be true. The next day, she received the script from him. The moment she had longed for had finally arrived. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope and carefully pulled out a thick stack of papers. The cover simply read, "Script for the lead role." Sarah's heart began to race. She sat down at the table and began reading. The first page of the script was ordinary, but the second one struck her as strange. The main character was a woman hiding her past life. She was battling demons from her past while not allowing herself to break. With each word she read, it became increasingly difficult for Sarah to understand why this script felt so familiar. Why did this story sound as though it had been written about her? Her thoughts began to wander, but she forced herself to continue. The script told the story of a woman who had once made a terrible mistake that affected her career. The mistake had been hidden, but now she was forced to face the consequences. In order to atone, she had to return to the people she had once betrayed. Sarah stopped. This was too strange. How could these events resemble her own life? She remembered how several years ago she had had to walk away from a role because during filming, a young actor had died. It was a tragedy that shook everyone on set, and although no one had blamed her directly, she felt that her guilt was undeniable. Even if it had been an accident, she couldn't help but blame herself for what had happened. At the time, she had used her connections and money to cover up the truth and avoid the consequences. That choice had allowed her to continue her career, but it had left a wound in her soul. Sarah kept reading, and with each new paragraph, her doubts grew stronger. The script described a woman who, like her, had made the choice to preserve her career rather than tell the truth. She had hidden the tragedy, tried to run from her guilt, and never allowed herself to face reality. With every new word, she felt more and more that this script was no accident. It had been written specifically for her. But who could know about her past? Who could have reproduced her experiences and mistakes so precisely, down to the smallest detail? She felt the blood drain from her face. She could no longer ignore these feelings. Sarah remembered Denzel's face, his words when he said she was capable of more, that he saw something greater in her. Maybe she was mistaken, but it seemed like this offer was part of something deeper, something more personal. Sarah placed the script on the table and took a deep breath. Her mind was racing, but one thing was clear. She could no longer pretend this was just a role. This film, this script, was more than just a chance. It was her opportunity to confront what she had been hiding her entire career. She decided to call Denzel. At first, her hand froze, but finally, she dialed the number. His voice on the other end was as confident as it had been that day in the cafe. "Hi, Sarah. Did you read the script?" he asked, as if he already knew the answer. "Yes, I read it, but—" Her voice trembled, but she quickly gathered herself. "I need to understand why this script feels so much like my life. This isn't just a coincidence, is it?" Denzel was silent for a moment, and Sarah felt the weight of his silence pressing down on her. "It's not a coincidence," he said finally. "It's your story. You're not the only one hiding the truth. But now it's time to face your demons." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. She couldn't understand why he said that. How could he know? Who was he to force her to confront herself in front of the world? "I don't know if I can," she whispered, feeling panic rising in her chest. "You're not doing this for me," Denzel replied. "You're doing this for yourself, to understand who you really are." The line went dead, and Sarah was left alone with this knowledge. She began to realize that her life, just like the life of her character, was no longer what she had imagined it to be. This was a moment of truth, a moment when she had to stop running from her guilt and accept that the consequences of her past might catch up with her at the most unexpected moment. Sarah looked at the script again, which now seemed completely different. She could no longer turn away from it. Her past was right there, and she had to either face it or destroy everything she had fought so hard for. Chapter 3. The Secret of the Past. The next day, Sarah woke up with a heaviness in her chest. The conversation with Denzel from the previous day had left a mark on her soul, like a deep scar. Her thoughts kept returning again and again to the script she had hurriedly read. It wasn't just a role. It was her life. But she couldn't believe this was really happening to her. How could she play a woman hiding her guilt when she had carried that burden herself for years? She got out of bed, trying not to think about what awaited her. Only two questions swirled in her mind. Why her? Why had Denzel chosen her? And why did the script so accurately describe her life? But the answers were as distant as the morning fog. Sarah decided she needed some time to figure it out. On her way to the studio, she stopped at the very cafe where she had met Denzel. The moment seemed like some sort of omen. Her entire life had changed since that day, and she couldn't understand if she should even be a part of this story. At one of the tables sat a middle-aged woman reading a book. Sarah decided that if she met her gaze, she would approach her and ask how she managed to live so peacefully. But that didn't happen. Instead of feeling like part of something great, Sarah felt emptiness. She knew she couldn't keep avoiding the truth. It was clear. She was ready to play the role. But was she ready to face what she had done in the past? At night, after rehearsal, she opened the script again. She started reading it from the beginning, once again immersing herself in the world of the heroine who was trying to forget her dark past. But the more she read, the clearer it became that the film's heroine was more and more like her. Each line of the script wasn't just words on paper. They were memories she had tried to forget, like a burning pain. Her thoughts drifted back to that summer, the one she had once tried to push out of her memory. Sarah remembered how, from that moment on, she felt the gaze of every person on her. On her conscience lay the death of an actor, his death. But someone had to take responsibility, and her ability to continue her career depended on how she handled the aftermath of that tragic incident. So she made the choice, which she thought was the right one, to hide the truth. Not out of fear of punishment, but because she couldn't bear what had become a part of her. Sarah closed the script and set it on the edge of the table. Her gaze fell on a photograph lying next to it. In it, she was a young, happy girl standing on stage. The photo had been taken shortly after she began her career. Sarah couldn't believe that the person in that picture had once believed in her innocence. That was before the tragedy. Gathering all her strength, she decided to call her old friend, John. He was one of the few who knew the whole truth. John had been with her that terrible day when everything went wrong. He was there when she made the decision to hide the truth. And he was the first one who told her she had made the right choice. But now, Sarah was ready to hear the truth, whatever it might be. "Hey, John." Her voice trembled with emotion. "I need to talk to you." He immediately sensed something was wrong. His voice was soft but cautious. "What's going on, Sarah? You haven't called in a while. I know you said I did the right thing, but I can't live with it anymore. I can't play a role knowing I'm hiding the truth." John was silent for a few seconds, as if thinking about her words. "Are you sure you want to do this? You know it will change everything." Sarah couldn't remain silent. Her soul demanded the truth. She knew she couldn't keep running. "I know what you're saying, John, but I can't be who I was anymore. I have to do something." In response, John sighed. You were sure you did the right thing hiding it all, but if you want to find peace, you have to face it. This is your chance." Sarah thanked him and hung up. She sat in silence, reflecting on what lay ahead. Her past wouldn't let her go, and she had to take responsibility for her actions. The script, now lying before her, wasn't just a story. It was her path to redemption. She understood she couldn't go back, but it was all she could do. The next morning, Sarah called Denzel and told him she was ready to meet with him to discuss her role. But now she couldn't stop thinking that this film had become her path to correction, not just for the viewers, but for herself as well. The next morning, Sarah felt as though her life was on the edge. All the confidence and bright future she had once enjoyed now seemed fragile, like glass. She knew she had to meet with Denzel, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was becoming too real, too personal. On the day they were supposed to meet, Sarah sat in her office, nervously flipping through the pages of the script, which now seemed to her not just a role but some kind of haunting part of her life. This film, this story of a woman hiding her guilt, felt too close. Why had Denzel chosen her for this role? What did he know about her past? She quickly stood up and walked to the mirror. In her reflection, she didn't see the woman she had been before meeting Denzel. She saw her weakness and the guilt that was now weighing her down. Sarah understood that what she was about to do wasn't just about playing a role. It was a step toward facing what she had been trying to hide for so long. All that was left for her was to accept the consequences of her choice. When she entered Denzel's office, he was sitting at his desk, looking as confident as ever. His gaze was calm, but there was a hint of mystery in his eyes. He invited her to sit and, without further words, pulled out another script from his drawer. "This isn't just a film, Sarah," he said, placing the script on the table, which now looked worn and well-used, unlike the fresh one she had first received. Sarah felt the tension building in the air. "Your role isn't a coincidence. I want you to understand that." Her heart began to race. "What do you mean?" she asked, although she had a feeling she already knew. Denzel smiled, but his smile was slightly tense. "I know your story, Sarah. Your real story." His words hung in the air. She felt the blood drain from her face. "You know?" Her voice trembled. "How could you? How did you find out?" "I didn't need much time to understand. I've been through a lot myself, and I can feel people. When you stood in front of me in the cafe, I saw that there was something more behind your eyes. This isn't just a role they're offering you. This is a chance for you to change your own path," he answered, his voice soft but full of strength. Sarah felt her throat tighten. Her mind was in turmoil. Fear, shame, relief. All these emotions blended into one. She couldn't believe he knew that all this time she had been trying to hide her guilt. But most of all, she was struck by the simplicity and honesty of his words. "Do you think this film is my chance?" she asked, her eyes starting to fill with tears. "No, Sarah," Denzel said, his voice becoming more serious. "This film is your chance to take back the life you lost, and your chance to reclaim your soul." Sarah closed her eyes, trying to hold herself together. She remembered that day when it all happened, the young actor who had become her friend, and how they had laughed together and planned for the future. But that day turned into tragedy. It was her decision, her choice, that destroyed the life of the one who had trusted her. "You're right," she whispered. "I've been hiding it all this time. I thought I could just keep living, but I can't anymore." She felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she didn't hold them back. In that moment, she felt as if she were truly beginning to let go of her heavy burden. She understood that she could no longer hide, that this film had become her opportunity to start a new path, even if she wasn't ready for the consequences. Denzel watched her calmly. "I can't walk your path to redemption for you, Sarah, but I can help you find the strength to take that step. And you must take it, to free yourself. His words were not just supportive, they were something more. They weren't just the words of a mentor, they felt like a revelation, a challenge to herself. This film, his idea, the role, it had all become the key that would unlock the door hiding the truth. Sarah took the script from his hands, slowly flipping through the pages. She knew that this path would bring a lot of pain, but she also knew she could no longer hide from her past. She looked up at Denzel and nodded. "I'm ready," she said, and perhaps these were the most important words she had ever spoken in her life. Denzel smiled, and his face reflected approval. This wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of her new life. Sarah woke up that day with the feeling that everything she had ever known would now be destroyed. She had made a decision she could not undo, even if she wanted to. This was not just a game, not just a role, not just a chance. It was a step into the light that led her to redemption. And the path she had chosen was not as easy as she had thought. Her days were filled with rehearsals and intense preparations for the shoot, but at the same time, her heart was heavy. This wasn't an ordinary film for her. It was a trial that forced her to face her own demons every day. She couldn't hide behind roles anymore. She couldn't block out her memories as she had done before. Every day when she arrived on set, she felt her past and present collide in a fierce battle for her soul. The day the shooting finally began, Sarah arrived early on set. Everyone was ready, but she still felt the weight of the past pressing on her chest. Denzel was there, and his calmness continually amazed her. He approached her, smiling, but there was something more in his eyes than just the role. He knew what she was going through. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice firm yet supportive. Sarah nodded, though inside she wasn't sure. She felt her heart race. This moment was decisive. She understood that if she didn't do this now, if she didn't open her soul, then the film and her role would never be real. But it wasn't just an acting task. It was her opportunity to overcome her fears and guilt. When she stepped onto the set, everything else seemed to vanish. It was just her and the camera, just her and the character she had to portray. Everything in her life, everything hidden in her past, was now under the spotlight. And she had to be honest. The scene was complex. She was playing a woman who meets the person who betrayed her and must apologize for everything she had done. Sarah knew this scene would reflect her own self. In her eyes appeared what she had been trying to hide for so long. She was ready to admit her guilt. This wasn't just an acting move, it was an unveiling of her soul. Denzel, sitting off the set, watched her, and she felt how his gaze filled her with confidence. In that moment, she understood that this film wasn't just about entertaining the audience. It was about her redemption. This entire story was for her. And Denzel knew that. Sarah continued filming, and with each shot, she felt like she was shedding her heavy armor. She no longer feared being open. It wasn't just about removing roles. It was about removing her own fear. And then, in one of the last scenes, she realized that this film had become her catharsis, her chance to understand herself and forgive. When the filming was over, she walked up to Denzel, and in his eyes was that same look that spoke more than words. He was proud of her, and Sarah finally felt that she deserved that look. "You did it," Denzel said with a smile full of respect. "You knew it wasn't just a film," she replied, her voice carrying not only gratitude but sincerity. She was no longer the woman she had been at the beginning. She understood that not everything could be hidden. But if you could admit your guilt, maybe you could start fresh. Those words stayed with her as the filming wrapped up. Sarah realized she had changed, and that she would no longer run from her story. She had accepted it, and that was the most important step of her life. A few weeks later, the film was ready. It wasn't just successful, it had become a symbol of her personal victory. Sarah hadn't just played a role, she had faced what she had hidden for so long. When the film premiered, Sarah sat in the theater, feeling her heart beat in sync with every moment on screen. This wasn't just work. This was her path to forgiveness, the path to becoming herself. After the premiere, as everyone was leaving the theater, Denzel walked up to her. "You've taken a step into the light," he said. And Sarah knew that her life would be different now. She was no longer a prisoner of her past.